While seditious conspiracy may be one of the most obvious potential crimes that Donald Trump may have committed with regard to January 6th, there's other crimes that are really starting to rear their ugly heads right now, right? Witness tampering, obstruction of justice, fraud against the U.S. government, and now a new one that people are finally starting to listen to, wire fraud. And the wire fraud claims actually come from the fact that beginning just several days after the presidential election, actually on the day it was officially called for President Biden, Donald Trump and his team started sending out emails telling people that you have to give us money for this election defense task force, is what they called it. In these emails that went out in the following weeks and months, they kept talking about the election defense task force. Send us money for the election defense task force, and we're going to use that money. They make very clear in these emails, we're going to use all of this money to challenge the 2020 election results in court. But hey, we got to have money to do it, so give to our election defense task force. So the problem with that, of course, is that the election defense task force doesn't exist. All the money that people were donating went right into Donald Trump's political action committees, none of which is an election defense task force. Furthermore, as has been reported for well over a year, Donald Trump didn't spend a single dime of his money that he raised on any election challenges. All that money either came from the individuals filing the lawsuits or from outside groups pumping money in to allow the lawsuits to be filed. Trump raised money, in other words, on false premises, which of course should be considered wire fraud. Here is what one former assistant U.S. attorney for the Middle District of Florida had to say about it. It's not whether you know something absolutely for sure. It's if it's, quote, reasonably foreseeable to you that people will believe promises and statements that you either know aren't true or are reckless or deceptive, which you are trying to use to get something of value. That's basically what they're talking about with regard to wire fraud. It doesn't matter if Donald Trump did or didn't believe the claims, right? It doesn't matter if he did or didn't intend to use the money for that and then never got around to it. All that matters is that they knew the election defense task force, of course, was not real. And they knew that they were making stuff up to get people to send them money. And they took the money. Now, again, kind of seems like a pretty clear-cut case of wire fraud. And if we were dealing with something that's not a campaign finance issue, this probably would have already been prosecuted. You know, if I were to go out there, start a little, charity and tell people, give me money so I can go save the sea turtles. And instead of saving the sea turtles, you send me money and I go buy a mega yacht. Actually, that sounds like a fraud scheme we've heard recently, right? With the We Build the Wall people. Because they raised money saying, we're going to build the border wall. They raised tens of millions of dollars and then they used it to buy themselves all kinds of fancy things. This is no different. This story, to me, is literally no different. Just because the money's going into a political action committee instead of, into the pockets of a bunch of scammers doesn't make a difference. It's the same scenario. So if you ask me, I think Donald Trump needs to be worried about this wire fraud scheme. One, because they knew the claims they were making were totally bogus anyway, and two, they knew they weren't going to spend any money trying to fight the election. This is something the DOJ needs to be looking at thoroughly. This is something the January 6th committee is not necessarily investigating because they've got way too many things to investigate now. So DOJ, off your butts, do this because this is right up your alley. And maybe we can finally get Donald Trump behind bars. I know it's a long shot. I know we don't like to be too optimistic about those things, but this seems like a pretty clear-cut case to me. This is Hattie. Hattie wants to know why you have not subscribed to our channel. You obviously like our videos, so do us a favor and subscribe.